To order tonight. We'll start off with roll call.
She's upstairs, so Commissioner Vaughn.
Here.
Commissioner Hubbardson.
Here.
Commissioner Soa.
Here.
And I did get a call from Commissioner Holloway. She's caught up in traffic. She said she'll be a little bit late. And I have not heard from Commissioner Burrow.
We'll start off with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a sign-up sheet?
Has everybody who would like to sign the sign-up sheet? Because we're getting it now, we'll make sure you get it too. Anybody like to sign up? Okay, would you, there's a clipboard there.
Thank you.
A fatal accident there by the sheriff's office. The alley closed both directions.
He needs a sign-up sheet with him.
Commissioner Holloway took the background on Zoom. Did you call the meeting to order yet? Yes.
We're waiting for public comment on topics that are not on the agenda. Here's your name.
Legal fees, you had to go to court for the three board members. Is the water district having to pay that legal bill?
That is an item that
You want me to take that? That actually is an item that will be discussed as part of the land management report tonight.
Oh, okay.
You have a feeling, what's the other?
I'll just deal with that jail report.
Barbara, do you want to speak now?
Yes.
Okay.
Barbara Camper, ex-commissioner, ratepayer. I have a couple of items to address here. First of all, I was surprised last night to see Commissioner Soa's reaction to the news that CRW is going to be responsible for the cost of much of the new waterline work that's being made necessary by Clackamas County's decision to start building the Sunrise Corridor. Unfortunately, most people don't realize that utilities such as CRW can get hit with these huge costs which have nothing to do with producing and supplying water. These are costs that contribute to the rates that have to be charged to CRW customers, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about them. This is only one of the areas in which a utility such as CRW is completely different from a manufacturing business. While I greatly appreciate the participation and concerns of the two businesses on the CRW rate committee this last year, I urge the CRW commissioners to remember now that uncontrollable costs such as these do occur frequently, and this is the only reason why their business approach to management of unit cost simply does not apply to CRW. I brought a handout tonight that was given to us, I believe, at the rate committee meeting a few months ago. It addresses the fact that much of the infrastructure of a water provider is underground, the pipes that transmit and deliver the water produced by the plant, and that things happen to these and they have a useful life. They just do not last forever. This article makes an interesting analogy to cell phones. the money that the companies put into these and the cost of services, so many of us rather, well, not eagerly, but we do pay. This article is entitled, "Unfortunately, you can't get your water over Wi-Fi." I have copies of that to hand out to the commissioners and some others. And then second, I didn't see on this agenda the subject of my potential purchase of the CRW laptop that was issued to me in 2007. This has to be either purchased by me or returned by tomorrow, and the purchase price has to be determined by the board. Thank you. Oh, also, for the new commissioners, I have that I'll loan to them my copies of drinking water in West Clackamas County that were produced by the Clackamas County League of Women Voters. And I do want them back, but they're available to loan if you want to take them. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Cindy, do you want to talk?
I'll wait until later, thank you.
Okay. Naomi, do you want to talk now?
I'm sorry.
I don't think I requested to talk, did I?
Thank you.
I don't think I put a request to talk, did I? Oh, no, I have nothing to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have now on the agenda a report on the insurance company.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Jeff Griffith. He's our agent of record. I'd like to introduce him to the board.
Welcome aboard.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for allowing me to make a short presentation. Each of you bring you up to date on the current status of the marketing of the insurance. Let me back up just briefly and let you know how we got to where we're at. September 26th, Special Districts Association of Oregon, one of 3 pools in the state, sent out notice to the district that they would be non-renewing the insurance effective January 1st. Most all public entities in the state are insured through one of 3 pools. Cities and counties are insured through cities and counties insurance. PACE insures most all of the school districts. The special districts insures most all of the special districts in the state. It's important to note that because with each of them having the vast majority of that clientele, it does impact how the marketing proceeds. When the marketing started, I want to point out that it's a little bit different than marketing a small business or a home or an auto. A lot of insurance can be quoted literally on the computer. Personal lines, for example, is one of those. A small business can be quoted quite quickly in a day or two with technology the way it is. This account is a little bit different, a lot more complex, and it takes a little longer to run through the system. In fact, what happens is an application goes into the insurance company. They do some pre-underwriting. A lot of times what they'll do is go online, look and see what they can learn about the public entity or the client at that time. They'll ask for supplemental information if they're interested in the account. Then probably do inspections, and then lastly they'll try to perfect their quote. This process, most insurance companies accept applications about 90 days in advance. They don't like applications longer than that. It's a very competitive industry, and agents could potentially send an application for a client 6-9 months in advance to block the market. Most insurance companies will only quote to one agent at a time. It's important to note that because when insurance companies get multiple applications, a lot of times it has a negative impact on whether the insurer wants to proceed or not. So on the 26th, when we got notice, we started developing a strategy on 30 days prior to the expiration date. We did start the marketing process and sent out applications. Your application, for what it's worth, is this piece of this binder and some financial information that went from the district. That's what started the application process. A number of companies asked for supplemental information, 6 or 7, that I'll get into in just a moment. In Oregon, you purchase insurance normally one of 6 ways. There are a number of ways you can handle the risk. You can self-insure it, you can put it into a pool, or you can do a 190 type of arrangement. But really, there are 5 lead ways. Some agents in the state are called captive. They work directly for one company. For example, a State Farm or a Farmers or a Geico. We do not have access to those markets. Those are direct markets. Another way is through an independent agent that represents a number of markets, and that's what I am, what we are. And that agent has a number of direct appointments with companies like Travelers, Oregon Mutual, Hartford Fireman's Fund, a number of big national names. Those agents also can go through what's called an excess and surplus lines broker, intermediary, if you will. And those individuals have contracts with the carriers. When you go to that intermediary, the excess, to get access to a fleet of companies that they insure or work with. There are intermediaries that have appointments with a number of frontline insurers like the Travelers, Hartford, Fireman's Fund, and the others. And then lastly, there are target markets, MGAs, managing general agents, that specialize in a specific type of insurance like water district. And those are key targets for us. The last 4 are where we focus because we do not have access, as I mentioned, to the captive markets. So let me give you a short report on where we've gone and some of the results. In September, first is a group called Gladfelter. They're a target market that specialize in public entities. A number of years ago, I reported to this board that they had purchased a program called the Potter Insurance Program out of Northern California. Potter, a gentleman named Paul Fuller that worked for Potter, specialized in water districts, developed a water district program that was a very nice program, well developed, and actually had tremendous success with it. A large target market company called Gladfelter brought him out, and they were one of the first markets that we went to. Initially, they declined to write the account. We have continued to work with them, and they have agreed to revisit their denial and look at the property portion and the auto portion. They will not look at the liability portion of the account. The second target market, called Apex, filed in September this year a water program called Water Plus. It's specially designed for water companies. Ironically, it was filed by Mr. Fuller. He left Gladfelter, his non-compete expired, and he started a second water program now nationwide, and it's just been filed in September in Oregon. They have declined to quote the account. A group called Canfield Solutions. They specialize in public entities. We have a long-standing working relationship with them in other states, quite a bit of volume, in particular in the state of Washington. We approach them for their water knowledge. They insure a fair amount of water districts in Washington, as well as other public entities. They also declined to quote the account. A company called Brown & Brown. They are the 7th largest intermediary in the world. They have revenues of just shy of $1 billion. We approached them. They have multiple outlets to insurance companies. They also declined to quote the account. A company called Grundy, we approached. They're an intermediary. They have a number of excess and surplus appointments as well as frontline appointments. They've also declined to quote CRW. We approached a number of excess and surplus markets. We have had some luck there. We have received a quote for a limited amount of directors and officers and employment liability. Those are the 2 lines we're most concerned about. I do want to point out that it is not the limit of liability that we're looking for, and it does have some very tight sidebars, some exclusions and warranties that limit some of the coverage. We approached one of the excess and surpluses that denied to quote was a group called IES. We approached a number of our direct appointments that we have in our office. A number started down the process, but then later denied to quote the account. Alliant's important because they control a company called Lexington, and that's part of the AIG group that specializes in large property. With that, we do have 2 preferred markets that are still in the quote process. One today, and I want to thank staff, so gracious to work with us, did come out and do inspections of the plants. They will not quote the excess and they will not quote the directors and officers liability or the employment-related type coverages. They are entertaining quoting the other lines. They are an A+15 carrier, and they have given us a target date of December 15th if they want to try to turn that around. I did, when the inspector left today, he assured me that his information would be forwarded to the underwriter today or tomorrow, and that would allow them to move forward. A second carrier has asked for some very specific pipe information, asbestos pipe and some of our other pipe. We have some steel pipe underground and some other pipe, and they want to know more about percentages and plans in particular to deal with asbestos pipe long term. And we're working with staff to get that information to the other preferred carrier in hopes that they will also provide a quote. We do have a couple of excess and surplus companies that have are working through the process. They have not given us a yes or no yet, but they are in some part of underwriting, looking at the account, doing research online, reviewing the applications, and asking for supplemental information. Let me explain what the problem is so that's well vetted for you. On the applications, one of the very first questions that they ask for is history of the account. In this case, we have to disclose that the account was non-renewed. That's a red flag. When you're canceled or non-renewed, that's a red flag that there's a problem. It's a bigger red flag in Oregon, as I hinted earlier, that the public entities are insured with pools. Those pools are owned by their membership. To my knowledge, Special Districts has only non-renewed 2 accounts, and I've worked with Special Districts since the 80s. So I'm only aware of 2 accounts, this is one of them, that they non-renewed. That sends a major red flag to underwriters that there is something going on that they need to drill down and learn more about. As you're aware, there is a significant amount of public publicity that has been vetted out through different media organizations, but I need to point out, with technology the way it is, insurance companies use that technology to underwrite. 30 years ago, they used to go to the yellow pages and look at your advertisement. They didn't have the resources they have today. Today, and this particular article was the one that was quoted to me most commonly by insurers that declined to quote. And this was, I believe, a June article in the Oregonian. It talked about the number of complaints, lawsuits, allegations that have been made, legal costs. And keep in mind with an insurance company, they're real anxious to know about what's costing legally to run the organization. When they look at this article, it has 2 bad sides. The first is the volume of allegations that are being brought against the organization, many of them internally. And my immediate response back to the underwriters was that most of those didn't bear fruit. Most of those did not result in a paid claim. There was some paid defense costs. The response, and appropriately so from the underwriters, is that most of these claims or allegations of claims that could have easily been 6- or 7-figure payouts for an insurance company now have a downside, a significant downside of liability. When allegations are made and they turn out not to have traction, it's possible the individuals those allegations are made against could come back against the district. So instead of having, and I don't know, Dean might remember how many allegations are in here, but instead of having a dozen allegations, really we may have as many as 2 dozen or 3 dozen allegations and liability liable that would go with that. This article was quoted a number of times back to me, and I need to stress that this is not like a single shock loss. This is not like having a corporation that had a rogue employee that had a drunk driving fatality where it was manageable. This is not a situation where we can apply good risk management and terminate that employee, take them out from behind the wheel or whatever the case is. This is a pervasive, an ongoing scenario, and when they're quoting, I believe, 5 managers in about a 2-year period of time prior to leave, when they're quoting high turnover, some other positions that have had some turnover, and SDAO stressed that several years ago with renewals. They wanted to see stability, stability with management. They wanted to see stability at the board. So when you look at this press, it is problematic. You add in the blogs and the other things that they can find very quickly and research, and the number of articles, it makes it much more difficult to obtain a quote. And I'd like to point out that the average underwriter that sees this account may sit on $5 to $6 million of business that they control. It would be typical for an underwriter to see 25 to 40 applications a month. And of those, they would quote probably 60%. About 40% of them either don't fit their appetite, there are issues with denials, claims, other reasons why they won't quote the account. So they actually don't quote 100% of what they get. They quote about 60% is what my underwriters tell me. And of those, they get about 1 in 3. Keep in mind that an underwriter is judged at their desk on volume, how much premium they control, their retention, they're judged on their growth, but most important, they're judged on profitability. So if you've got an underwriter that manages $5 to $6 million of premium, and they're looking at potentially what could be dozens of claims that could be 6, 7 figures each, how do you price that? How do you put a price tag on that? Would you gamble and say, let's charge $1 million for what we think could be a claim, and then double that because they need to be at about a 50% profit? That's where they get their bonuses. If they get into the 60, 70% loss ratio, they're not in good graces with their own insurance company. The reason that I stress that is that when an underwriter who is pushed for volume looks at what we have here, there are many reasons for them not to want to move forward. And I apologize, I lost my train of thought there.
Publicity.
Yeah, this is not good. We do have a couple companies that we've worked very closely with that we have great hope will come through. But I can't sit here today and tell you that January 1st you're going to be insured. We do have one quote in. I believe that we have good traction on the property and on the automobile. I'm hopeful on the general liability. And depending on the articles that are picked up, imagine being a bond carrier and recently with the issue of seizing control of banks. That's not something a bond carrier wants to read about. It's what would happen with that money if in fact it was seized. So there are a number of red flags that have made it more problematic in the marketing process. We are working through those, and I'd like to entertain questions, thoughts, concerns.
Questions from the board?
I have a couple of questions. You've spoken pretty general terms about the articles in the paper and general liability and that sort of thing. Can you be a little more specific? Because it sounds to me from the article as well as what I've heard, that the problem is at the board level, for starters. Is that correct? Is my assumption there correct?
I believe so. In fact, SDAO a number of years ago specifically put a contingency on the longevity credit that the management team stay intact. They felt strongly about that, and yes, I believe that to be the case.
Is the problem at the board level, specifically excessive litigation?
Litigation is a key issue. A number of years ago, I believe that a board member filed 4 complaints, a complaint against 4 different board members. And that's not something that we've seen historically in the state. I just don't see that.
Can you be specific?
Would you repeat that? I don't know if I heard that right.
Well, Dean, correct me, but I believe a number of years ago in the claims record that a board member filed complaints against 4 other board members. Is that correct?
There was litigation filed against, Commissioner Holloway brought litigation against, and I'm not positive, I don't recall if it was 4 or 3, but certainly 3 other board members at that time relating to her being removed from the presidency. That was in 2007.
Can you be specific as to which commissioners have been a problem?
Well, those were filed by Ms. Holloway. The insureds talk usually to an agent or to a claims adjuster at the company level. It is rare to talk directly to other parties at the company level. And one of the things that was noted was an ongoing email series of responses with a number of allegations of wrongdoing, of different complaints brought against the board, against the district. And those were a concern with special districts, as I think they would be with any insurer. In my 30 years of insurance experience, I can think of very, very few times where an insured has actually gone directly to an underwriter or to an underwriter manager. The few cases that I can think of, it was to push for better rates, and that always played poorly. I am unaware of any case where complaints have been brought directly to management staff of an insurance company, which is part of why I think SDAO was very adamant for stability at the board level.
One last question.
Sure.
We're given to understand that there may be appeal registered in court regarding our appointment to this board. In order for the district to defend its position, do you have an estimate of what the legal costs might be?
I don't know. Dean would know better than I would, but I would be surprised if you don't get in and out of there for something between $20,000 and $50,000.
And that would be a cost that would have to be picked up by the ratepayer on something that the court was pretty explicit about at the last hearing. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Other questions for me?
Any other questions?
Yes. The E&S market you're talking to, are they talking about quoting excess liability, or are they at the primary level?
They are, we're asking for both. We're asking for excess umbrellas over underlying, which we don't have secured yet. Most excess carriers have requirements on who the underlying will be, how they're rated, what makes it strong. So we are asking for umbrellas. We're also asking for primary coverage.
And what limit of primary coverage are you having quoted at present?
Right now, because it is so problematic and a genuine, and I want to stress this, a genuine concern is just securing liability insurance. We have asked for an array of quotes. I will take whatever we can get. My preference would be that our underlying limit at least meet the wording toward 30.260, 30.300 for an obvious reason. When you layer liability, it's best to layer it above that level. So my preference would be to start at $1 million, which is over what the wording code is today.
And since my name was brought into it, I will share some information. The claim that Mr. Phillips referred to was focused principally upon concern about board members having inappropriately spent public money. And in terms of And in that situation, I paid all of my own legal fees. CRW didn't pay penny one in legal fees. Second, it was covered by the insurance policy. Second, the litigation that has occurred recently has all been brought by CRW against me and other commissioners and former commissioners. So I would also point out, as clarification, that the action taken to place at least 2 of you on board was done by Clackamas County, not by Clackamas River Water. So it is a misnomer to say that the Clackamas River Water ratepayers would be paying any defense costs, because that is purely the issue between the appeal and Clackamas County.
I suspect that that's not the case, but I'll defer to counsel on that.
I have
Well-
a question I want to get. Okay. Given the current situation, it appears that there's going to be more litigation along the line. And our insurance expires the first of the year, right?
Mhm.
So between now and then, we have insurance, but after that, we don't.
We may not, we very well may not.
However, but the district itself, in terms of the physical assets, those will be insured. I think I heard you right, the liability for the facilities itself, themselves.
We don't have that secured yet. We are working on that. We worked on that today.
But that's more likely to happen than it is for the rest of us to be insured.
If you were looking for me to put in very specifically what is highly likely and less likely, keep in mind that we have a month before the renewal date, and any of these quotes can be withdrawn based on more and more articles and discovery as they get around to the quoting. So this is a snapshot today, and it is very generic, please. The least likely to get coverage for, we do have a quote for, but what I said several months ago, or at the time of the notice, was the employment related. That was my biggest surprise. We do have some limited coverage there. I'm hoping to get broader. I don't think I will be able to get broader. General liability would be second. Part of that has to do with the liable issues, but general liability for the operation of the district, our water product, our board, and other types of liability events would be the second most unlikely to get. Auto liability and physical damage, is much easier to obtain, and our property coverage. One of the things that makes property a little bit problematic, since the towers came down that tragic day of September 11th, 2001, those were high property losses, billion plus. Now, many years ago, high value property was highly desirable because there just weren't losses. Today it's more highly scrutinized. Our plant is worth about $40 million roughly. We have some very expensive electronics in there, and they do scrutinize that. The plant is older, but it's in pristine shape. And that was the report today we got from one of the inspectors, is the plant is extremely well managed and in very, very good shape. So I'm very hopeful that we'll cover all the property. I'm very hopeful we'll cover the auto, physical damage, and liability. The general liability is what is of great concern. And properly covering employment-related practices, termination, hiring, firing, harassment, those types of things.
What, the continuation of some of these activities, the negative stories, could impair the whole process, all of it, the whole thing.
Every day is an interesting occurrence right now. One of my frontline markets that we have a large volume with, that we work very closely with, when they received the application, I immediately called each of the underwriters, and one of them laughed, told me they were having a very difficult day, and thought I had sent the application in jest because of all the press. So it is technology gives a great deal of information to the underwriters, and at some point, every underwriter will be discovering these articles.
President.
Captain?
Did I hear you correct in making the statement that you have no access to direct markets, or am I wrong?
I do not have access to Farmers, State Farm, and some of those markets. I do not.
Why is that?
I'm an independent agent. I am not a captive agent. I'm not licensed with State Farm, Farmers, and some of those groups.
So by having you as the agent of record, the ratepayers are handicapped in regards to what markets they can reach out to as far as insurance is concerned?
Having any agent, no agent has access to all markets. And with public entities, not just in Oregon but in other states, we don't find those direct appointments, Farmers, Allstate, State Farm, as players in the public entity market.
So in order to take and have the CRW go forward in locating the proper insurance, you wouldn't mind removing yourself as the agent of record so that we can go to the open market and have total and complete application? to all of the
Actually,
markets?
to facilitate that, I did run an ad asking any agent or any company that would entertain the district to contact me. And I would be happy to, the key issue is getting insurance. I'd be happy to coordinate with a third party. What is critical is that third party not misstep and impact what is already in motion. But if there are other markets, I would definitely like to be aware of it, and we welcome it, which is why I ran the ad.
But would you answer my question, please?
My sole purpose is to help get coverage for the district. If Lee and the attorney ask me to step down, if the board asks me to step down, you have the right to fire me, I think on a 30-day notice, but I'd waive that. If you want me to remove, I will, in the best interest of this district, I will step aside.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Jeff. The last comment I would make is that in terms of expending CRW money for legal fees, that must come either as a directive from the board or has more commonly happened authorized by the general manager. So the board obviously would have knowledge if it was going to contemplate spending money. The board has no knowledge if the general manager is spending that money.
Any more questions?
I'd like to hear from the general manager on that.
Okay.
The board reviews the legal invoices every month and approves it.
Thank you.
Chair, so
Legal fees
I must speak to this.
our legal counsel is approved by the board with the exception of employment, but they're reviewed by Mr. Phillips and they're supervised by Mr. Phillips. So I'm not sure what Commissioner Holloway is referring to.
Yes, I'd be happy to enlighten Mr. Moore. First of all, speaking for myself, the access that I have had to legal services invoices finally came after a more than 2-year delay. I reviewed them, I dictated them, the ones I had access to, the ones that were not redacted, into a recorder and transcribed it, so at least I have some information. That's how I know on Beaver Creek we paid Mr. Phillips $102,000. However, the board policy requires that when special counsel is retained, special counsel means anybody other than Mr. Phillips, that the board be promptly notified. One of the things that I found when I went through the limited number of invoices redacted that I was allowed to see is that Mr. Phillips employs many other attorneys. Those fees come in a lump sum. For example, I think July was $30,000, They come in a lump sum in a single line item on the accounts payable record with no information whatsoever about what those fees were expended for. And so if Mr. Moore is saying that each month we get a line item, then he is being candid. If he is saying that each month the board members review the actual legal services invoices based on my personal experience, I can tell you that is not true.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get into tit for tat here, but I do think, I don't want to get into tit for tat here, but I can tell you that most recently Commissioner Holloway spent 10 hours in 2-hour increments in this building looking exclusively at legal invoices. She indicated after 10 hours of looking at the invoices, she was only halfway completed. What I said to her was, at the rate you're going, I can't afford to spend additional staff time on this. What I would do is give you an estimate of what it would cost to photocopy those invoices. I believe we gave you a reduced rate because you had already spent 10 hours on it. And we would make copies and you could look at those at its leisure. It is true that some of the information on some of the invoices were redacted because of current litigation or in areas where Commissioner Holloway had a conflict. We covered up the narrative portion of those invoices only, and she was able to look at everything else. So that's what's happened. Commissioner Holloway has made several requests to the district attorney. The district attorney has agreed with CRW in terms of our method and our approach, and she has yet to come in to pay the appropriate amount of money for copying those invoices so that they would be made available to her, even though we have offered her those, we've given her a price. And prior to that, ex-Commissioner Kemper agreed to act as a go-between for those informations, and Commissioner Holloway refused to accept it. So I don't know what else we could have done other than to provide that information to Commissioner Holloway at no cost, but at increased cost to the ratepayer.
I only challenged your statement that we review the legal invoices every month, Mr. Moore. That's all I said.
Before we leave this item, I just have one final comment. It just, if I may, Mr. Chairman. It just strikes me that the reason that we're having a whole bunch of legal fees is because certain commissioners, when they're not satisfied with the answer that they get, consistently want to go to court and litigate things. That needs to stop. If it doesn't stop, the costs will continue. It doesn't make any difference who paid your legal fees. The district ends up having to defend these things, or the taxpayer does through the district attorney's office. It needs to stop. We have a democracy. 3 is more than, is a majority of 5. When the decision is made by 3, it is a board decision, and we should be able to move forward and get through things that have been pending for as long as 10 years. This is silly. It needs to stop, and we need to move forward. And the litigation, whether it's at the appeals court or whether you like our appointment or don't like our appointment, it just needs to stop. It's not fair to the ratepayer or anybody else that's paying attention to this. I'm done.
Dr. Sullivan?
Captain?
I would earnestly suggest that the new members take and make themselves available to listen to the October 13th, 2011 meeting. I have a transcript and unredacted copy of the audio also too, of which you'll hear the manager very plainly state that the board majority at that time tried 3 different times to maliciously persecute and bring malicious claims against Commissioner Holloway. Those were brought against her under false pretenses and as extremely high rate of legal fees that the ratepayers had to pay due to Moore and Phillips' attitude against Commissioner Holloway simply because she asked questions about where the money is, where it's going, and what is the real purpose behind this 190. I really suggest that you take and start to do some study and study the history, because as any good United States Marine Corps even would tell you, that if you don't take and learn the past, when you enter into combat, you're going to be in trouble. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
If there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
We have a series of action items.
Second here to get this warmed up. Start off with good evening.
Because of my policy, we require a motion before we take action on an action. So we can have a motion to proceed.
I will move to approve recurring payments presented in July 2012, item A.
I'll second.
Okay, now we'll have discussion. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, good evening. I'm Carol Bragg. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Clackamas River Water. I'm almost there. What we're talking about this evening is a motion that was presented to the Clackamas River Water Board of Commissioners in July of 2012. Annually, we bring to the board the recurring payments that we have that exceed $50,000. In your packet, you'll find a list of those specific items. Many of them are items that we don't have a contract with. They're things such as the PGE bills, and we utilize a lot of electrical power to operate the water treatment plant as well as the pump stations to get water from the plant to our customers' homes. Additionally, we have the water purchases with South Fork Water Board. We have membership dues. There's a couple of larger dues that exceed $50,000. The PERS contributions, which is part of state requirement, as well as included in our contract with the representative employees. We include in this list the district insurance, which Jeff just spoke to all of you about. And we also include our bond and debt service, so we still have outstanding bonds of about $4 million. And our payment this year is about $650,000. So those items are included, even though there's not a contract per se that has been presented to the board. So I did provide the same list that was given to the commissioners that were in place in July. We have had a couple of changes, and again, Jeff just told us about the insurance, so we do not have renewal. We don't know what the cost of the insurance is. As soon as we have that, that certainly will be presented to the board. The non-renewal does not impact the health insurance provided to the employees, nor does it impact our workers' compensation insurance. So those we have already, we pay the health insurance every month, and we pay the workers' compensation for the year. We also rebid the janitorial contract. We've changed to a new company called Unequal Janitorial Company. Their cost is lower. So they're on the greater than 50,000 list. Their annualized cost is now less than 50,000. So we also included a list of some contracts that have been brought to previous boards. And those are landscaping, water treatment chemicals, materials inventory. We have contracts with 2 different companies so that we have the flexibility to get what we need when we need it. The combined total of those is $100,000, but we typically only spend $50,000 to $60,000. We have meter reading services, legal services, and the IT backup services. So that's the company that backs up all of our servers in case we have any kind of computer failure. So here's a motion for item 4A. But I'd be happy to take any questions about the items included in your packet.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Can I make a quick correction, please?
Yeah,
I would stipulate that my motion read as the draft motion is so worded.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to the second?
Second.
That was my issue.
Up to the same.
Yes. Did you, let's see. I don't see here the same list that you distributed the first time this issue came around in July. Did you update that?
It's the same list that was issued. I told you what the changes were, and again, I don't know what the insurance cost will be, so I did not change that number. And I did not move the janitorial from the greater than 50 to the information only.
Okay, so I just wanted to be sure that I did give a copy of this yesterday to all of the other board members, so I know they have it, but I thought perhaps they had something updated. A couple of comments I would make. One, on the insurance, I do believe that the board should specifically authorize that, because who knows what kind of decisions we're going to have to be making, including even a potential for self-insurance. So I would think that that should be other than the workers' compensation and health insurance. I think that other than workers' comp and health insurance should be taken out, because it may have to have a completely discrete number. The other things you would note on your list, there's a final column called approximate annual dollars, and that amount is not binding. And my concern has been, was then, and is now, the potential legal fees, because if you can find page 2 of 4 in this AG document I gave you yesterday, what you will see is that the approximate estimated number is $154,000 for Phillips Law Office. That doesn't mean that the general manager is only authorized to pay Phillips Law Office $154,000. It means, with a yes vote, that he may authorize any amount of legal fee that he cares to incur. And at this point, and I haven't, of course, seen November, which I imagine is going to be rather expensive, because I think Mr. Phillips was made extensive use of. At the end of October, it was $60,000 already for the year. So my recommendation is that the board find a way to craft a control on that, and perhaps require that if Mr. Moore, the board's going to know if it wants to spend more money. If Mr. Moore wants to spend more money, that he would have to come back to the board. Because, we've had $250,000 years, several.
Priscilla?
Good.
One of the best ways to begin to take and stop the inappropriate spending is to reduce the general manager's authority of $50,000 and bring it back down to $30,000, so that control can be exercised over that. And these issues can be brought to the appropriate end of the board before the ratepayers' money is sent out without the board's knowledge. It should be lowered to $30,000. Simple.
you say bring back the 30,000, when was the increase of 50,000?
I believe it was in '09 or '10.
If I may, I believe, I'm looking for memory, Mr. Moore was originally on an interim contract for about 6 months, and I don't remember if it was shortly after that, but he did come to the board and request 50,000 rather than 30. I would point out to you that his contract says that if his spending authority is, or if his authority is reduced by the board, there are certain contractual things that may kick in. So, but there is no prohibition against reducing it to 30,000. And I think if you look at the rest of the material that I gave you, a limitation like that would have saved us an awful lot of money. Mr. Day, Ms. Cochran, Mr. Phillips, et cetera.
Question from the audience?
We'll get to that in a bit. Any more questions or comments?
I was wondering if Ms. Wright would care to respond to what has been said.
Well, I would simply like to say, if you look at the items on this list, these are ordinary course of business items that we have to spend. They do exceed the 50,000, which is the general manager's current authority limit. But all of these items are also included in the annual budget, which has been approved by the budget committee and adopted by the board. So this is like a third layer of approval of us having money to spend to process and distribute water.
Okay,
I was wondering if Mr. Moore had any response, particularly regarding the legal fees issue.
Well, again, I'm not sure what problem we're trying to fix. I haven't heard an example of where I have abused the spending authority, specifically to the board policy. The board policy actually grants the general manager $75,000 of signature authority. And when we talked about this, when we raised it, because I was only hired on an interim basis, I said 50,000 was sufficient. And so that's the number that we settled on. And if you look at the board policy in our public contract, or maybe you can ask Mr. Phillips, there is a figure of $75,000 for the CPL. And we settled on 50. What I'm saying is that the board hires these specialty attorneys through Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips supervises those attorneys. And when the invoices come in, after he's reviewed them, the staff signs off on them. And then the dollar amount is listed monthly in the check run, showing what that is. So it seems to me that the board already has oversight and has used that oversight, and I have no problem with that.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might address the board just very briefly. I know we could spend hours on this issue because it has been a recurring issue and a complaint, particularly of Commissioner Holloway and Commissioner Sterling about the legal expenses. The legal expenses are high. There's no question about it for an organization of this size. I made that same statement to the previous board. I made that same statement to the paper, the newspaper reporter, and I make that statement here today. There's no question they are too high, but it is just disingenuous to say that Mr. Moore is abusing the legal expenses when we have all of this recurring litigation and claims, complaints filed with the FBI relating to some unknown crime that has never been disclosed, but nevertheless a complaint. We were served with an FBI subpoena that took hours of legal time to respond to that. And now we have a complaint that the agency is spending way too much in legal fees. I mean, I just don't understand the logic here in terms of how we can complain about the legal fees, and yet we have this continuing and recurring litigation that is undertaken by two commissioners. Yes, CRW did file one piece of litigation against Commissioner Holloway. The decision was made to dismiss that litigation, but a condition was put on that general judgment, which is now being appealed by Commissioner Holloway. We have continuing expenses on that appeal. Again, it's disingenuous to complain about the legal fees when you continue to file claim after claim after claim.
I have a question. Mr. Phillips, board policy states that you keep the board updated on all contracts with other legal organizations monthly.
Correct.
Do you do that?
Yeah, I don't think the policy says monthly, but I think the policy is that the board would be advised of when we hire counsel. And I can assure you, Mr. Chair and the board, that every time we have hired counsel, the board has been advised. Most of the time in executive session, the board was advised. I never heard the prior board complain to me, other than Commissioner Holloway and Commissioner Sterling, that we did not keep the board advised of counsel that we were hiring. I have complied with that, I think, and Mr. Moore has complied with that. It's either been he or I who have advised the board anytime that we have retained counsel outside of myself.
Thank you. Moving on, would you sit down for a moment so we can have public testimony on this?
When it's convenient.
Anyone who wish to comment on this? Let me send these, raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cindy Lewis, Waltham Ratepayer. I would just ask the chair a question about procedure. It was my understanding that there was a motion on the floor, and I don't see how the comments about legal counsel were germane to this discussion. I understand there's a lot of discussion that may need had, and I understand the two commissioners' questions about legal counsel, but I think that this perhaps is the wrong time, at least from what I understand of Robert's rules, that it's not germane to the discussion of the motion at hand.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
So I want to talk about legal counsel, so, Mr. Chair, so I'm pretty kind of go there. It's just mind-boggling to me that they just can sit over there like they're the saviors of the ratepayers. And this is all.
Point of order, Mr. President.
I can rattle your chain of thoughts, sir.
You know,
Yes.
this is not any sort of thing except for direct verbal attack upon the board. That's all that it is. This man has repetitive behavior. He comes here time and time again. We've requested of Mr. Moore that Mr. Moore produce the contracts and the legal documents of which this person owns property and obtains water from the ratepayers to understand what it is that his agenda is. And none of it's been done, you know?
I'm trying to make this thing, because at the end of the line, when you don't have insurance, but of course I know you want to fire the other guy, because you can get better insurance from Aflac or somebody. It's just, you two can just sit up there like with these legal bills. And Mr. Phillips was not here for a while when they were trying to cut down legal fees. And of course, I'm glad he's here now, when it's a 3-year company, and they're to try to explain this to you. But at the end of the line, just like the guy was saying here, if they were gone, you probably wouldn't have this problem. and I came here and asked those two to resign, if Mrs. Kemper and Kehoe would resign. And her answer was basically no.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the audience? If not, we'll move back to voting on the question.
Are you calling the question, Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
That actually is not proper under Robert's Rules of Order. It's a common misconception, if I may make
I
that
just asked if he was
point.
calling the question.
pardon. I didn't get your point.
Oh, perhaps I misunderstood Commissioner Humberston. I thought he was calling for the vote.
I was
And-
asking the chair.
And it's my understanding that it's a common misconception under Robert's Rules of Order that simply calling the question engenders the vote without a completion of discussion.
You have more comments?
Yeah, I would just, I would like to point out that my suggestion relative to the motion before us relates only to legal fees and to the insurance cost. And no suggestion that the others are not ordinary and regular business expenses. I do have to say, for the record, that when I did go through the 2 years of legal invoices, I found legal firms that they may have, the information may have been communicated to other commissioners. It was certainly not communicated to me. And it is under the general manager's authority that they've been retained. Van Cleve and Cobrain is one, for example, and there are others. And the other, Van Cleve and Cobrain. The other specific is in the case of the BCT matter. The board originally authorized Mr. Phillips to go to outside counsel and obtain a second opinion, and we had a budget, I'm working from memory, about $20,000. That morphed without any knowledge to the board, at least not this part of the board, into paying them about $62,000 plus $102,000 to Mr. Phillips. And as we all know, we're at a point now where we really haven't solved the problem. So what I'm saying is that because the board previously allowed this endless legal service payment without coming back to the board, that's how we got into this. And if we want to limit it, since it almost all, with very rare exception, comes through Mr. Phillips with no detail. If we want, as a board, to control that cost and to at least know where the money's going, we will exempt that or put a cap on it so that it isn't unlimited. And if Mr. Moore wishes to spend more than, whatever it was, $154,000 to Phillips Law Office, he would need to come back to the board and explain why. That's all I said.
I believe how we can get through this process is if you would make an amendment to the motion to remove the legal fees from the motion, then we can vote on the rest of it.
All right, then I move that the legal fees and the insurance other than workers' compensation and health insurance be removed from the authorization of the large and of the expenditures that are in excess of the general manager's authority.
Second?
amend, made and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in,
Dr. Sullivan?
yeah,
May we have Adora read it back to us once again so that it's clear and concise to us, please?
okay.
Commissioner
Say
Hall,
to amendment.
Commissioner Holloway moved that legal fees and, hang on for a second.
Want me to say it again?
Nope. Commissioner Holloway moved that legal fees and insurance other than the workers' comp and health insurance be removed from the expenditures in excess of the general manager's authority. Grafton Sterling seconded the motion.
Thank you.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion, that amendment fails. Now we're down to voting on the original motion. They're very clear what that is. Yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
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 Motion passes.
3-2.
Next item.
I did want to point out to the commissioners that I have also included some recurring payments that are less than $50,000. This is just for information only. It also will kind of help give you a sense of some of the things that we need to spend money on to operate the district. The next item is item 4B. This is brought before the commissioners to discuss activities that took place in July, August, and September of this year. I've provided a summary here of the items. The only issues of concern are the authorization to negotiate the cost of service rate study with a not to exceed $100,000 budget. As the Board of Commissioners heard last night, we do have a contract with FCS that is less than $50,000, so the process has begun, but that was one item that failed during that time. And additionally, we had two resolutions. Resolution 01-2013 was a recurring resolution. This is something that we bring to the board every year, just to keep them updated. It was the authorization of bank accounts and signatures. Briefly, our checks are signed electronically with both Mr. Moore's signature and my signature. We have a third signer, Mr. Cummings from the water treatment plant, who can sign if we needed to do a manual check. Those are the signatures that are on the bank card at the bank. Again, no changes to that. It was simply bringing it back to the board's attention so that everybody would know where we currently were. The second one is Resolution 02-2013, and that again was best practices, bringing the investment policy back to the board. And the investment policy, no changes this year, just simply bringing it to the board's attention. And I do have a draft motion here.
Violated my own rules.
I was wondering.
Did we have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah,
perhaps
make this a draft motion.
I'll have discussion.
a couple of quick questions?
Yes.
Can you back up one slide? Thank you. The motions that failed 2-2. If we approve agenda item 4B, does that approval mean that those resolutions then are passed?
Good question.
I want to be clear on that. Or do we have to take them individually because of the tie nature of the numbers?
No, it's my opinion that by ratifying those motions or action in block, it is the motions and actions that are listed as presented, so only those motions that are on this list are the motions that you will be approving. But you can approve them in block, you can ratify them in block.
Okay, so we're not ratifying the old results, we are actually creating our new results.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any people in the audience wish to? Oh,
The board should be aware, excuse me, that the signatory authorization under board policy is for also the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. And I'm sorry, Mr. Griffin's gone, because I could offer him some correct information instead of Oregonian information. The concern, which he expressed, that, quote, people were gonna go and take over the bank account, was actually something that was never discussed at all. When this motion came before us originally, I was concerned that the board signatories, who should in fact have their signatures registered and able to sign checks if need be, had fallen by the wayside. And when certain commissioners placed the general manager on administrative leave, the concern was, of course, that only then Ms. Bright and Mr. Cummings had signature authority, and that Mr. Moore still had signature authority. So there was no attempt in any way, shape, or form to, quote, take over the bank account. Nobody could do that. Nobody on the board. Because nobody on the board has signature authority, even to this minute. So that was, again, you know, if you take truth from the Oregonian, well, so be it. But in fact, you do need to know that no member of the board then or now had any ability to lay hands on one penny. Only staff hold that authority to this minute. So one of the things I would recommend to you is that you request staff to execute those, have you execute those signatories as you are supposed to do under policy. Relative to the other one, the investment policy.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Would you clarify that? Are you suggesting that you want the board members to be signing the checks?
No, I am suggesting only that the board members who, under policy, have signature authority, fill out those cards and gain signature authority. That's all I'm just suggesting that you follow policy, that's all. And it's up to you. It's not, I mean, it's nothing I want to debate right now. I'm just telling you that was my concern.
Okay. That's you. I just want to be sure I understood.
I just have a question. Is that something that's happened in the past that you're referring to? That the board has signature?
It has been that way since I've been on the board. But I've been here since 2007. There was a point when I had signature authority. So.
How is that granted?
It's in board policy. I think it's in the investment policy as well. I'm not certain.
Maybe Carol can help.
I think I can clarify. I do believe that the resolution says the general manager, the CFO, and the water treatment plant manager, and those are the signatures that are at the bank. The resolution also includes on the list the president, treasurer, and secretary of the board. We just don't have signature cards on file. There's really no reason for that to happen. Should something happen, you know, if all three of us get hit by a bus, that resolution can be taken to the bank.
So if I understand what you're saying is that we, the board, don't have to sign the card.
bank cards.
That's correct.
But you can if you wish. So, I mean, that, it's that uncomplicated. I don't know why it's such a big deal.
Well, I didn't
Mr.
know
Chair,
what you were getting at, and that's why I wanted clarification.
if I might help clarify this as well, the signature authority that Commissioner Holloway is referring to is the contractual signature authority. It is not the bank authorizing resolution authority that Ms. Bright is talking about. Under board policy, the board president and the secretary are given contractual authority to sign on behalf of the district. That is not the banking authority that is the subject of this resolution.
Question on that,
But
if I may? Go ahead. I would assume that that would mean that the chair and the secretary would sign a contract when the board approved that contract.
Correct.
So we could not just unilaterally go in there and sign it.
That's correct.
Certainly, in my experience, that's never been the case.
No, that is correct.
Okay,
That is-
thank you.
that
So the
is-
protections are built in, so that no individual person can just unilaterally make these decisions. There is a process that has to be followed.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's the purpose of that policy, is
Makes
that
sense.
for those contracts that come before the board president and secretary have signature authority on those contracts.
Ms. Bright, if you would, do you have that policy with you? The
I-
investment?
I don't have to do
There's
it
a
with
policy
this
here.
Or the check
resolution.
signing, no, the check signing policy. Because it
Oh,
does
right.
say, I believe you just said, general manager, CFO, Mr. Cummings, or his position, and secretary, president, and treasurer, correct?
Yes, but there is no need for those signature cards
Well,
to be at
that-
the bank. In fact, I would advise against it.
That isn't the subject of the discussion. I just want everyone to be clear that we're talking apples and oranges here. Apple is the board president signs contracts. Oranges is there are 3 individuals eligible to sign checks and eligible to fill out bank signature cards, correct?
The bank signature cards is not something that has been in place since I have been here. Those names are there for that catastrophic.
It's not an issue, Ms. Bright, whether they are filled out or not. The policy says they may be, correct?
The policy says that they may be signers on the account.
Okay, fine, that's all I wanted to clarify.
Mr.
And if I
Chairman,
may move on to the investment policy, do you mind? We'll finish that. My objection to it last time around is that it talks about internal controls. And we have been trying to get information about the actual internal controls at CRW. And all we have been able to receive is a copy of policy that says we will have them. And so I still am not willing to vote for it without knowing what the internal controls actually are in place. So that's it, I'm finished.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
The discussion brings to mind the importance of having board oversight. Former Commissioner Mitchell was reviewing internal documents and checks that were being cut and discovered $75,000 of ratepayers' money embezzled by an employee. Had we not had a member of the board looking at the internal workings of the money in and money out, that would have not been discovered. So, but anyway, that's the point that I wanted to bring up. We still are talking about agenda item 4B, are we not?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. I have a comment in regards to the methodology of which I hear a vote is going to be taken this evening in block. I disagree with that. The issues are too important to take and vote these in block. They need to be gone over appropriately, individually, and they should be voted as they respectively are written here, not in a block.
Thank you. Lee?
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we've heard about today is the need for internal controls. If the board members have the ability to sign on the checking account, if the board members have the ability to issue the contract, and if the board members know the specifics of the internal control, what control do you have?
Thank you. We'll move on now to public testimony. Cindy?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I have a question about the voting, the way that this is going. It's my understanding when I heard Commissioner Grafton kind of confused me a little bit. I heard that this vote to be ratify the motions, actions taken by the COW board during the period of July 1st through September 30th. That was the draft motion, and that was, I believe, the motion that's on the floor. Is that correct, sir?
I don't think so. Yes. That's the motion there.
Yes, sir. So then, when the vote would be taken, it wouldn't be approving all of these actions, it would just be ratifying these actions. In other words, the ones that were approved would be approved, and the ones that failed would fail, still fail.
That is incorrect.
No.
I'm sorry,
Well,
excuse me,
then-
Mr. Chairman.
Well, then, sir,
My apologies.
the reason I'm confused is if you ratify an action, my understanding of the word ratify an action is that you're saying that what happened in July, in August, and September, those actions then take place again. It's the same vote takes place again. And if it's not ratify, am I wrong in my understanding of that word?
This is the same question that Ken asked while ago, and I'll give it.
That was specifically the question I asked. I wanted to know, were those tie votes ratified as they stood, or if we voted on this en bloc, would the results be that those motions actually passed? Because that was the intent of the motion. And that was the question I directed to Mr. Phillips, and his answer was that those items that previously failed for insufficient vote would in fact have passed. That is the intent.
And
I want to make that clear.
I may have misunderstood your question. I thought it was, Mr. Emerson, that as to whether you could vote on them in block or not. And so I think to remove any question about that, I would make a recommendation that the motion be amended to state, I move to ratify and approve the motions and actions taken by the CRW board.
So that we would then end up with that result.
So that you would end up with a new approval of all of those actions. If that's the intent, if you want to approve everything that is on that list with this action, then I would recommend that be amended.
This is a point of parliamentary procedure. Is it appropriate for the second on a motion to go ahead and make a motion as an addendum?
Yes, to amend, you would make a motion to amend.
Also, you can ask for a friendly amendment.
Right.
If that's okay with your second.
Okay. I think I was the second on this one, so I will go ahead and move to amend the motion to reflect the language that you just used, so I don't try to copy it. The intent of which is to make certain that it's understood that the three motions that previously failed, should this entire motion pass, they will have passed. That is the intent. So that's a motion as an addendum to the motion. And the question is, does the motioner accept it? You?
Chairson?
Yes.
Chairson.
You asked for a friendly amendment, you're asking for an amendment.
I'll go with a friendly amendment.
So, somewhere, you will say, and approved.
Yes.
I move to ratify and
Yeah.
approve.
Ratify and approve?
Correct.
Isn't ratifying taking the vote that was there? That's my question, sir. Taking the vote that's there and putting it forward? Or did you just want to approve all these actions?
Well, the approve would take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
I would suggest that you really don't want to ratify prior actions because so far as the information that is publicly available exists, Commissioner Kehoe was not on the board during that time period. And you don't, I've got a lot of documentation, but I don't believe that the three of you are actually in a position to take that position because you just don't know. And I remember Mr. Kalani asking that question, I think, the prior meeting. So I would suggest that if your intent is to simply approve them, that be your motion, because if you ratify something that you acknowledge that you know nothing about, I just don't think that's a good idea. I don't recommend it.
Does our legal counsel agree that we should take out the word ratify?
No, I think that Commissioner Holloway is incorrect in this particular instance, that it really doesn't matter whether Commissioner Kehoe was in the district or not, as long as this board ratifies and approves the action. It is an action of this board.
Any more public comment? If not, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No, I was signed up to speak.
Pardon?
I signed up to speak on this.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. Before the votes, please. I was happy to hear that Commissioner Humbertson and Ms. Wolfram addressed the issue the concern that I really had about this. I didn't want those things sitting out there in limbo just because they got voted against by Commissioners Holloway and Sterling. And so it's clear now that those will pass. That's correct?
If they get the votes.
If this goes through. Okay, another thing, and this is not addressing the motion, was the comment, and the comment by Commissioner Sterling didn't address the motion either. I just have a comment on what he said about Warren Mitchell discovering the embezzlement. Then finance manager Steve Lidson took complete credit for that. He did not say that Commissioner Mitchell discovered that. It's something that happened under his watch too. Thank you.
all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No?
No. No.
No?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Motion passes. Now we have item 5. And we have a new person.
See, I'm going to go right to the language before we get started. Mr. Chairman, I would like to move to approve both the utility agreement and resolution 03-2013.
Second. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is
is agenda item number 5. And in the agenda, it's basically to consider an award of a utility agreement for the construction services to construct, relocate CRW non-reimbursable water-related infrastructure to the JPA, or the Sunrise Corridor project. I have documents attached, the resolution, and also the Exhibit A, which is the utility agreement. That's why it's so many pages. What I did was, instead of going down, even though my PowerPoint's going to review a lot of this, I condensed it into some of the basic topics. I'm assuming most of you read some of the detail. Several of you have heard this fairly repetitive the last few years. Basically, the Sunrise Corridor preferred alternative was the final selected project. Originally, it was a 4-lane highway from I-205 Milwaukee Exchange out to 72nd. It was revised by ODOT and the county to a 2-lane highway from the Milwaukee Expressway out to 122nd. So it was quite condensed. They're still going to be closing the Longfield Road at Industrial Way at the railroad crossing. They have a new I-205 crossing at 82nd Drive. They're improving bicycle pedestrian accommodations. The new intersection at 122nd and Highway 212, where the highway comes in. And it improves just general intersections, improved traffic signals, striping, drainage. I did put up the map. It's a fairly large map. Basically, the Milwaukee Exchange area with I-205, the hot 2-lane highway goes through here, through the Camp Withicum area, comes on along and slides into at 122nd. This is 212, 224. That's the general overall picture of this preferred alternative. At this point in time, items completed over the last few years working with ODOT and OBAC, who is the contractor of choice for a competitive bid process for ODOT. They went out and did an investigation of all the utilities and came up with a conflict letter, which was issued to us on March 9th of this last year. That letter just goes right down through and shows everything that we had in place that would conflict with the road conflict. Now, of course, before that, I knew this was happening, so I was working closer with ODOT, the county, our staff, and hoping to find these areas, potholing, that sort of thing. So we've been working on this, like I said, about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years before that period of time, identifying these issues. This letter is the official conflict letter. It says you are to move your utilities. Along with that, a month later, they issued us some utility plans, which identified those conflicts by letter and location. It was decided at that time that because OBAC was doing the transportation design for ODOT, that it made sense for OBAC to do our waterline designs, to slide them into their construction specifications and their drawings.
May I ask a question as we go? Go ahead. Something like that. Did that give an economy of scale savings by doing it that way?
That was the intent, yes. Because OBAC designers knew all the right-of-ways, had all the drawings, they were able to use all those base drawings and put our facilities in those.
So they didn't have to go back a second time, they had it all?
So it wouldn't be another engineering firm having to go out and repeat all the design work.
Okay.
And it was a savings of design. So in April 24th of 2012, OBAC did a letter scope of work. And on May 10th, the board approved a professional service agreement, a PSA, with OBAC. Working with OBAC, in fact, OBAC stepped up even before it was approved and started working for a letter of conflict response to ODOT. So we were prepared fairly quickly to turn right around and get that letter back of what we had planned on doing, which also identified reimbursable and non-reimbursable. We'll get into that in a bit. Basically, non-reimbursable would be our responsibility to move. cost-wise, and the reimbursable was the parts that ODOT would pay for as part of the highway construction. So, and since August, we have been working on preliminary designs. As we got into the design, we found several locations that were not conflicts with staff help. We potholed. We had 3 locations that were not an issue for us. And ODOT came back with a design contract amendment reduction of $44,000, or $44,430 reduction. So there was a savings there because as we were going through the work, it was work that they did not have to design for us. On November 15th, we had probably a 90% design set for ODOT to review and discuss. Active items right now. Summer, fall, winter, we have a design, final design due on November 26th with, I'd say we probably got 99% of it done. We do have a few issues that we can complete in the next 20, 25 days before the date of December 1st. I believe that was supposed to be December 20th. I apologize for that. December 20th, the final contract is all due with the design. We are working on that as we speak. We're going through meters and some nomenclature on the drawings and the specifications which we'll be reviewing. And there's the final design. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to back up. The utility agreement is due December 1st. That's why we're meeting, I have it tonight. The final design edits and estimates are due December 30th. I misspoke. Scheduled items for the future. ODOT plans on advertising the JPA project construction in January. Bid opening is March of 2013. Right around that period of time, we start our budgeting process here at CRW. So by that time, we will know the actual cost of the non-reimbursable portions, which will help us budget closer. Right now, we had a budget item because of the schedule. We weren't sure when they were going to actually start construction. And as we are learning tonight, and it's kind of somewhat of a reminder, ODOT requires a deposit prior to bid opening for the estimated amount of the construction, so the non-reimbursable portion. That's what this utility agreement is all about. And that's per their rules. So last year, we estimated for this portion of the work $300,000 as a budget line item. We had another budget line item, $300,000 for a massive road. That turned out to be a reimbursable portion, so we will not have to spend those monies. ODOT will be paying for that piece of the work. And it looks like probably in May or June, they probably will start construction. It's probably a 2.5 to 3 year project. Reimbursable. As we were going through our work, Mather, Bordeaux, Monfield, these locations. Location 4 was completely eliminated. We had some alternative work in 3, which was also determined not to be work that we had to do. 122nd Ford, Enoch cul-de-sac, which is a road extension and service road to the Enoch manufacturing down here on 82nd, and the Oregon Iron Works meter relocation. Those are all reimbursable. That estimate right now is standing at about $700,000 that ODOT will be expending on our behalf for relocating or building new water line source services, items, that sort of thing. The first line here should not have been there. It says estimated ODOT. I apologize. I just caught while I was sitting here. So let's move on to the non-reimbursable. We have 3 locations. Highway 112 to 24, the 82nd Drive piece, and 125th Court. Our estimated construction cost, which is in the utility agreement, is $268,591 that they require a deposit prior to the letting of the bid. So sometime in December, they would expect a check from us for that amount based on this agreement. Within the agreement, I will point out
Bob,
that,
excuse me?
yes,
A check for what amount? The whole amount? You
the
said
268,000 for the non-reimbursable portion only,
Okay,
not the reimbursable.
so it's really not a deposit, it's